for more on the growing international fallout that the U.S. now faces. We're joined in our studio by Steve Clemons. He's the Washington, D.C. editor-at-large for The Atlantic. And Steve, thanks so much for joining us. Always a pleasure to talk to you. How does the U.S. emerge from this cloud that just keeps floating over it? It seems like every day a new revelation, and it's a tough one, isn't it?
Well, the intelligence establishment has just moved from a gravity-less environment to something where the gravity switch has just been turned on. A lot more people know what it's doing. It's going to be held accountable. We have world leaders that are angry. We have American citizens that are upset. And so they've got to find a way to basically do their job of keeping the nation safe and yet being more honest and truthful about some of the things they're doing, or at least make a social contract with the players out there that the role they play deserves this kind of essentially behind the shadows operation. I think that the President of the United States has got to go out and talk to world leaders and apologize and say this is not characteristic of the nation, our values, the kind of norms that we represent, and do a deal and say that we're going to suspend those sort of programs, and he'll put his name to it. We have the most technologically sophisticated intelligence and eavesdropping club in the world. And so even when nations think they're blocking us, they're not. So fundamentally, there's not a technological fix to this. It has to be something that the president, pledges to do.
This is almost kind of a throwback to another era here in Washington, D.C. During Watergate, we had Senator Howard Baker saying, what did he know? When did he know it? And there's been a lot of questions about what did the president know? When did he know it? And who else knew? And you're hearing different versions from different people. Some people on Capitol Hill, yeah, I knew this was going on. Others saying, no, I didn't know anything about this. That also seems like it would be a huge disconnect.
Well, this kind of, Dana Priest of the Washington Post wrote a fantastic expose on the American intelligence industrial complex, if you will, and how big and sprawling it is. And the key point she made was that no one knows how big it is, how far it extends, and that long ago Congress sort of became derelict in its duty of oversight because it just became so large. There are people like Dianne Feinstein and others who've been deep in the know, but she's even coming out and said she didn't know many of the aspects of what we were spying on, and she should have. So it looks like no one was really paying attention or had the capacity to pay attention to what was going on. And I fundamentally think at the end of the day, the president has been someone who has furthered and continued many of the policies and practices of the Bush and Cheney administration, where we engaged and we had secret prisons, we had extraordinary rendition, we had spying on American citizens without warrants. We had a lot of this stuff, and people thought Barack Obama was going to suspend those things and usher in a new era of transparency. And what we're beginning to see is that was, frosting on the cake, but the real cake was a lot of continued national security state-type stuff. And I think that fundamentally he's got to turn that around and restore credibility. And he probably, I don't want to say because I'm not an advisor to the president, but he probably has known quite a while more than we intimate he did. When you're searching for bin Laden, when you're stopping terror attacks around the world, when you're trying to assimilate great amounts of information, and you're having a morning meeting every morning about who you kill in the world, the president's got to be pretty well informed.
Well, and do you think that there's going to be this rollback, and can it all be pinned on a guy who's sitting over in Russia right now who must be smiling, thinking about all the stuff that
Well, that's a complicated question. When Edward Snowden came out and revealed the things he did about the U.S. and the United States law, I was one of the people that said, don't jump on him. The president came out and said, we need to have this discussion, and the president didn't initiate it. Edward Snowden did. When he began talking about what we've done with China, what we've done with Russia, I began to say, wow, this has gone over the line with something that's really not in that arena. Now when we look at the scale and scope of what's coming out week after week after week, we were just talking about, I find it staggering. I don't know what's coming next. None of us do. There's apparently an extraordinary file, and it's like a TV show that's better than what the fiction writers could write. And to a certain degree, I think the nation ultimately is in a better place with the rest of the world for some of these revelations coming out. But I don't think the intelligence establishment or our national security bureaucracy will ever be able to say, thank you, Edward Snowden. I think he's going to be chased to the end of his days.
Well, they're definitely on their heels. There's no doubt about that. Steve Clemons, thanks so much.
My pleasure. Thank you.
Appreciate it.